On revitalizing India's apprenticeship ecosystem, insights, challenges, recommendations and best practices. We are joined for the launch event by Dr. Arvind Nirmani, member NITI AAYOG, and Shri BVR Subramaniam, CEO NITI AAYOG. From the Department of Higher Education, we have with us Additional Secretary Shri Anandrao Vishnu Patilji. We are also joined by representatives from the International Labour Organization, FICCI, CII, team leads, among others. This launch event has online participation from state officers who are leading the apprenticeship initiative in their states. A very warm welcome once again to all the participants as well as media persons who have joined us today. Today's report presents the first in-depth evidence-based mapping of India's apprenticeship ecosystem, identifying challenges that must be addressed to unlock the full potential of apprenticeships in India. It analyzes participation trends, regional variations and sectoral demand. Drawing upon national and state level analysis and stakeholder consultations with central and state government officers, industry bodies, training providers and employer representatives, the report presents 20 action-oriented recommendations which are categorized into 5 interlinked pillars. The report maps out actors responsible for implementing each one of the recommendations along with suggested timelines and performance assessment indicators. With this brief introduction to the report, I would now like to invite Dr. Sonia Pant, Program Director, Skill Development, Labour and Employment, to make a detailed presentation on the report.
A very warm welcome to all of you for this report launch. Indeed, it's a very, very important day for all of us as the Skill Development and Employment Division. I'd like to thank CEO sir, member sir for gracing us, also representatives of Education Ministry, Skill Development Ministry, all our partners, and also our partners who joined us online from the state government. Thank you so much. With that, I'll make a brief presentation. I'll request for the presentation to come up. Yeah, thank you. Move to the next slide, please. So I'll be presenting some of the highlights of the reports to you, and as Sakshi has already said that one of the key highlights of this report is the entire challenges roadmap that we have prepared in terms of action-oriented recommendations which has come under 5 pillars. These have been mapped in terms of the timelines, how can you implement those recommendations in short term, long term. We've looked at who will implement those recommendations, who are the key actors. And we've also looked at what are the key performance indicators which will successfully lead to implementation of these recommendations. There are 20 major recommendations and these have been mapped into 92 key performance indicators. And the other important thing about this report which makes it unique is that we've done a very detailed quantitative analysis, and this analysis has been done on the basis of disaggregated data. We've looked at national data, we've looked at, from this data we've looked at state level insights into special districts, and this has helped us to do a deep dive in both the important schemes which are present in today's apprenticeship ecosystem, which is the NAPS and the NAS. So National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme and National Apprenticeship Training Scheme. So both the schemes we've looked at in detail. Another significant feature of this presentation and this report is that we've looked at special districts which includes aspirational districts, we've looked at Northeast, we've looked at tribal border and other districts. So our insights are based on a very detailed stakeholder consultation, not just one but several. And based on these, we've come up with some highlights. So broadly, if we go to the evolution of apprenticeship ecosystem in India, I wouldn't go into the details, but this is a fairly established ecosystem in the country, beginning with the Craftsman Training Scheme, then the Apprenticeship Act, and all of this slowly converging into the NATS in 1993, and then coming in of the NAPS in 2016. Both NATS and NAPS, the two important schemes which are implemented, NATS being implemented by Ministry of Education and NAPS by MSDE, have their own features, but both of them complement each other. One looks at integration of the higher education ecosystem with the skilling and the job landscape. Other looks at more on the vocational, speaking very generally in terms of the levels of integration. It looks at more of vocational ecosystem and how do you link it to the skilling and the jobs landscape. So both of them have their own uniqueness, but they are complementary to each other. Both schemes have seen newer versions. We've seen NAPS 2.0 and we've also seen NATS 2.0, which has kind of evolved over time. Another important feature about both the schemes is that 25% of the stipend is reimbursed in case of NAPS, whereas 50% is reimbursed in case of NAPS. So those are some of the insights into the schemes. And so we go into the NAPS with that brief introduction, and the NAPS ecosystem, we've been able to get more information in terms of the data available on the portal, and we've tried to look at it in terms of data analytics. And here we will present to you some analytics on active establishments, registered establishments, then who are the actual beneficiaries in terms of number of apprentices who have benefited from this ecosystem. So before we get into the analytics, I think it will be good to go into what is an establishment. And establishment refers to any entity engaged in a business or trade with the requisite infrastructure to provide on-the-job training. And as per statutory guidelines, all establishments with a workforce of more than 30 or more, including both regular and contractual, need to engage apprentices ranging from 2.5 to 15% of their total manpower. So this is the definition of establishment. Then you have registered establishments. These are establishments which are formally enrolled into the system, and active are those which have engaged at least one apprentice. With that, we move to the next slide. So in this slide, if you see, we are explaining what is the state-wise trend in terms of establishments under the NAPS. We'll see that for the year 24-25, out of the total registered establishments, the top 10 states account for about 80%, and bottom 10 states account only 17%. Union territories have a smaller share of 3%, and Northeast states only 1%. If we were to look at the universe of active establishments, we'll see that again, top 10 constitutes an overwhelming 84%, bottom 10 states around 10-11%, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of telling us, if you look at the map as well, India's map as well, that the apprenticeship ecosystem in terms of establishments is concentrated in a few states which are more industrial states, and there is less or limited presence in the other states. So there is a need for stimulation for the lagging states, and probably some sort of policy insight and some sort of policy push is needed to balance the ecosystem so that there is a balanced development in this regard. So this was in terms of number of establishments. Now we come to number of apprentices. So if we were to look at the year 2024 and 25, FY 24-25, we'll see that there were about 13 lakh registered establishments, of which engaged were 9.85 lakh, or about 10%. But over the years, there has been a good growth in this ecosystem. We have data from 2018-19, and we can see that registrations have grown, engagements have also grown significantly, and also completion rates have grown. However, if we were to look at what percentage of registered apprentices actually engage in training every year, then that number is about 46-47%, and on an average of 70% of those who are engaged complete training. So there is a need for improvement in terms of engagement as well as completion of training. So we now move on to, again, we are looking at state-wise analysis of apprentices under NAPS. And here again, we are looking at the number of apprentices in terms of registered, engaged and completed trainings. And here as well, we are seeing regional concentration of apprentices with a limited presence in some states. Next slide, please. This slide is interesting. It is telling us which trades are preferred, and we'll see that so there are two types of trade: designated trade and optional trades in NAPS. And we'll see that the designated trades have ITI domination, and while the optional trade have more enrollment, as well as they attract a wider talent pool. And you can see that there is a big uptick in the graph for the ITI enrollments. So gender-wise, again, apprentices is a male-focused or a male-dominated scheme here. But however, one good thing is that in terms of registration, as well as in terms of apprentices registered, engaged and completed, you will see that the yellow part of the donut represents women participation, and that is increasing significantly from 2018-19 to 24-25. It increased from 12% to 23% in case of apprentices registered. In terms of engaged, also we saw an improvement, and definitely an improvement in terms of completion as well. So this is a small chart on the special districts. So we see that the aspirational districts have recorded a strong participation, but completion rates are lower than national average, so more work needs to be done on this. Border districts have exhibited a smaller participation but a good completion efficiency, and NER districts also show marginal participation but maintain their completion outcomes, and interestingly tribal districts have shown large scale participation but a lower completion rate. Next slide please. So we come to NATS, and we'll just go into one slide in this because of paucity of time. And here we'll see we have the first bar chart on your left side, which shows you the number of apprentices engaged in 24-25, which is about 5 lakhs, and you'll see that the number is, so this scheme is lower in terms of its enrollment as compared to NAPS. NAPS is much more than this, but it caters to a different kind of interest group here. And also, if we were to look at the gender-wise share, we'll see that the percentage of women engaged in completion is becoming better over the years. So here as well, if we were to look at the states, we'll see that top 10, similar to apprentices, top 10 states are doing much better. So for example, I'll quickly go through pillar 1, which is policy and systemic reforms. So we are talking about integration of the apprentices schemes that are prevailing in the country today, so that they can come onto a common platform and there can be streamlining. Secondly, there needs to be a seamless pathway from education to skilling, and we've made some recommendations on that. Thirdly, probably some kind of incentives are needed, especially for certain districts which are not performing that well, but they are showing promise in terms of completion rates. We also need to expand apprentices to emerging and future ready sectors, and also there is a need to increase the eligibility band of establishments. Coming to structural and regulatory strengthening, again we are proposing an apprenticeship engagement index for states and UTs, and this will help states benchmark against each other and also do a cross-learning from each other. We are speaking of standardization of evaluation, so that both designated and optional trades have similar standardized evaluations. And we are also talking of industry adoption and ITI's upgradation, which is already happening through the PM Setu. For states and district-specific intervention, we are asking for re-energizing the district skill committees, and they need to catalyze the local apprenticeship transformation. So there is a very important role that these committees can perform, and there is a need for targeted support and systemic strengthening of this entire ecosystem so that more apprentices can engage and complete their training. Again, as far as industry and employer engagements are concerned, we are talking of deepening MSME participation and also integrating this entire apprenticeship ecosystem into the startup system. And there is a big need to transform the industry perception, the value that they get out of this apprenticeship program. Next, please. And this is the last pillar, which is on apprenticeship and aspirant support. So there are when we spoke to the students and the children who are actually undergoing these trainings and to the training provider, we found that there are certain improvisations that can be done, which will lead to more participation as well as improve aspirations, as also create this as an aspirational platform. And this will also lead to enhancing global competitiveness, because there are international mobility possibilities available, but people don't know. So there is a need to enhance awareness also, and also include women and enhance their participation in the program, apprenticeship program.
Thank you. My colleague Sonia and her team from the Skilling and Employment Division, my colleagues from the Higher Education Department, Skill Development, and others who are here from other organizations, friends from the media. It's extremely happy day that we are coming out and releasing a report on an area of very high priority for the government. If you recall the budget of 2024, June, a lot of priority was given to skilling and employment. There were 5 large schemes which have been announced in the context of skilling, in terms of internships and also subsidies for employment. This actually in a way supplements what was done there. As Sonia has just said, we do have 2 large apprenticeship programs, one by the Higher Education Department and the other by the Skilling Department, NATS and NAPS. And the numbers show you how important these programs are. The number of students who are being trained here is actually quite significant. One scheme, if I recall correctly, NATS was introduced for people in technical professions, which is basically engineering graduates and others. And the other was introduced subsequently, much later, for the non-technical degree holders and graduates in training. Why is this very important? We are a young country. We have a median age of 29, which means half our population is below 29. And if you look at people who are actually working or in that age group which are just about to enter the workforce, which is 15 to 29, and 29 being the median age, 35 crore Indians are in that age. This is the workforce of tomorrow. The question is, how is this workforce equipped to handle the deep requirements of jobs? There was an earlier generation where you learned from parents, from local community, went into the same professions as your parents, etc. But when you are looking at an industrial transition of India, the people are going to move from rural to urban, from agriculture to industry and services. You need something which will not come from the normal ecosystem. And that's where both education, skilling and apprenticeship go together in preparing the workforce for this transition. A farmer's son cannot become a factory worker unless they acquire something. 1 plus 1 can get you 2, it will not get you 3. A, B, C will not get you D. You need that additional input somewhere. The education system is doing a lot. The skilling ecosystem is also doing a lot, but this is one of the most well-established systems in the world, which is training while you are doing your own education. That is why it's called apprenticeship. What is the key feature of apprenticeship? You do it A, when you are studying. B, you get credits for that in your regular courses. So it actually counts for your thing. In other countries, people take a year off and work. It's called a co-op program and come back to your degree. The thing is, in India also the legal and now the policy framework exists for that, and that's why it's visible in the numbers. So this skilling, internship and now apprenticeship ecosystem is the backbone for Vikasit Bharat in terms of making our people transit from agriculture to industry and services. And what this report does is, it has done a deep dive, it has done survey of people who are actually doing apprenticeship and trying to figure out what is it that we can do better. A lot is happening that is good. But if you look at overall macro numbers, there is a long journey still to cross. Our target for 2047 is that 50% of our students in that age cohort should be in higher education. What does that mean? The reverse side is 50% are not going to be in higher education. If you focus on that, how will the 50% not in higher education be job ready? They'll have to have skills. And that's where apprenticeship comes in. Even for those who are going to colleges, curricula in colleges takes a while to adjust itself to real life realities. 2 is a lot of theory. Where do you learn the practical part of life? And I think that's what apprenticeship does. It fills that gap, bringing theory closer to practice. You learn skills which are actually going to make you more employable. And this is what is very, very important. You've seen the data that has been presented. There are a lot of other issues which are there, which have come out here. People don't see skilled workforce as a very respectable pathway. Maybe that is what we have inherited from, a colonial master. Everybody wants a white collar job sitting on a desk. Even if a chap doing a blue collar job may be earning twice the income. So we need to change. Make working with your hands more respectable. It is already more remunerative. There is no doubt. An auto rickshaw driver in Delhi earns more than an engineering graduate in Delhi. So given that, we need to make this more attractive, respectable, etc. Also, you will see apprenticeship happens in specific locations where you have industry. That brings some states to an advantage, some states to a disadvantage. And the question is, if industries in India are concentrated in say about 10 states, which you could, it's not even 10, about 6, what happens to people in other parts of India if they want to do apprenticeship? There's an issue of regional balance. The second thing which you saw is there's a question of gender balance. You will see that somewhere between 2/3 to 80% of all the people who are doing this apprenticeships are males. How do you get women into this? They also need to, because it also requires going somewhere and actually working. Apprenticeship is as good as work. You are paid less, but then how do you get women to go there? So I think these are the challenges that are there. And I think there are 5 broad areas of reforms with 20 sets of recommendations, which briefly Sonia alluded to. The presentation will be online. The book will also be online in a couple of hours. All of this will be there. But what? 5 large. You need to change some policies. I mean, why do can we merge the two into a common platform where people can choose A or B? And why do we need to run? And it happens because one scheme or program preceded the other by a couple of decades. So there's always an issue for merger at some point, etc. The second is some structural changes. 3, making it more convenient for people to access. Women want to go, you need safety, maybe some transportation allowance, etc. There is also industry engagement. How do you engage more and more industry to take it? You see the number. Active registered establishments are large. Active establishments are a fraction. How do you get more and more people? Also completion rates. 70% are registered as potential apprentices. Only 1/3 or half complete their apprenticeship. So you need to actually improve what actually happens in apprenticeship. Companies should not see apprentices as a burden. That is the other thing that comes out strongly. So maybe how do you bring industry more actively into this? Last but not the least, our India lives in its villages and districts and states. So how do you actually energize the system at district level, state level? So these are the recommendations that are there. You also have the advantage of technology now. You can have digital platforms by which you can integrate and make people choose where they want to. So a boy or a girl from Bihar can do apprenticeship in Maharashtra. A boy or a girl from UP can go and do something in Tamil Nadu. If we can actually facilitate that, digital platforms would be a great help. The other is, a lot of new sectors are emerging. You got solar, you got wind, you got renewables, critical minerals. A lot of new areas are growing in India. Semiconductors. How do you actually get people to apprentice in these areas? I think these are the challenges. And the good thing with the report is, it is a practical, implementable report. That there is nothing blue sky here. Ministries can actually go ahead and roll it out from next week onward. Secondly, it has broken up recommendations into short term and long term. So what you can do tomorrow and what will take slightly longer. And last but not the least, it has given a survey of global best practices in every area. What is UK doing? What is Germany doing? What is Singapore doing? What is Australia doing? It is there. Very often, there is no harm copying somebody if it helps us improve. Okay, so as long as you're not cheating, you're copying so that you learn better, I think it's a good practice. So if we learn what others are doing and do ourselves a good turn by doing better, it will be a great help. I look forward to working with the two ministries, both higher education as well as skilling, to take the ideas that have come out of this forward. Thank you very much.
Start with Viksit Bharat. So as the Honorable Prime Minister has noted many times, that as far as industry, services, agriculture is concerned, competitiveness is a very important thing. But I think one of the new things which he has emphasized, which I recently spoke to a kind of academic audience, which they still don't realize that we are not talking just, the Honorable Prime Minister is not just talking about cost, but about quality. He has repeatedly emphasized that an important element of competitiveness is quality. And that is where the skills are so important. And again, though I have emphasized this many times, it is appropriate skills at every level. So quality is not just a matter of the top of the pyramid, but it is quality at every level. You get a quality product if you have the skills relevant at every level. So the skilling challenge, it is actually a huge challenge. Let me give you a few numbers which we know. So if we look at international comparisons, the share of secondary students enrolled in vocational and technical programs was less than 2% in India in 2017. This is about the benchmark which one has calculated is about 8 times this level. Now, that is a huge challenge. So if we look at some of the corresponding data on short-term, post-secondary courses, tertiary, again, data is available and we are falling behind our own benchmark which we need at our level of per capita income by in one case 1.4 or 40% and another case 2.5. So that is the huge challenge. Now the National Employment Policy 2020 was probably the first one to recognize this big challenge which we have. I'm not sure they had this data available to them, but I think in talking to people and looking at the scene, they were very perceptive, and I'll just read out a few things from here. So one of the things that NEP emphasized was that grades 6 to 8, every student should have a hands-on sampling course on vocational crafts. Okay? Clearly recognized in this integration of mainstream schooling and higher education. In vocational, they went actually to say that the walls between vocational and academic stream must be put down. And this target, which you also mentioned, of 50% of learners to have vocational. These again are very challenging things. The reason I'm reading out NEP is that a lot of kind of attention has gone into issues which I think are of marginal relevance. I don't think there's enough focus of people who are read the NEP even on these very, very important and critical steps for the country. In this context, the role of firms is very important. Again, let me give you one number, which is actually not bad, but it's indicative of the huge increase that is still needed. So roughly 7.7%, according to the latest comparative international data, roughly 7.7% of firms in India have even some kind of a formal training for their own employees, leave aside apprenticeship, etc. So, why is this important? Well, we have comparative countries. Vietnam and Indonesia have about 1% point more, even Vietnam and Indonesia, which are not known to be a big industrial state. The Thailand, Mexico, Malaysia are way above. Thailand is about 2x our number. Malaysia is 3x and Mexico is 4x. So, very, very important to get firms involved in this whole issue of skilling, whether it is skilling of young people coming into the system or their own employees. So with that background, I think it's very important, this study is very important, particularly from recommendations, and I'll point to 2 or 3 things which from my perspective make it very useful and very important. So one is that we must have the involvement of the best firms in industry, corporate, whether they are corporate firms, export-oriented MSE or deep tech startups. And I'm very happy that that this study went out there. People went out and talked to the firms, because you cannot make good policy. This is my experience of 30, 40 years of making policy.
Subramaniam, CEO NITI AAYOG, has constantly guided us and encouraged us to work towards an actionable roadmap for the report, backed by evidence from data analysis and expert consultations. We are grateful to our Program Director, Dr. Sonia Pan, for steering this study and providing her constant support at every stage of this work. I wish to appreciate the outstanding commitment and untiring efforts of the research and analysis team, comprising of Shailendra Yadav, Radhika and Hitesh, supported also by Arnavi Sagar. Several interns have contributed at different stages of the study, and we would like to commend their efforts. Special thanks to the design and communication team of NITI AAYOG for putting together this report. Apprenticeships can be a game changer in unlocking the potential of India's demographic dividend and opening pathways to skilled employment. We hope that the report will not only serve as a valuable resource for all stakeholders, but also inspire collective efforts towards implementation of initiatives towards strengthening apprenticeships. We look forward to working together in building and sharing knowledge and strategies on skill development and employment in India. Thank you once again.